Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, we've got on the eastern Beaufort Sea coast again a blizzard warning, but that's not currently going on. That kicks into effect at beginning midnight tonight, continues through noon Sunday, and looking for winds gusting 35 to 55 miles an hour, and then blowing snow in those winds, reducing visibility as quarter mile at times, maybe even whiteout conditions. And the other warning area here is a winter storm warning for the snow, some of which is blowing and drifting around here in the northern Kobuk and Noatak valleys. Anywhere up to 3 to 5, maybe 6 inches of snow falling in this area. And that's due to end actually at 6 p.m. Saturday evening. It's just a couple more hours from the time the show is taped until it ends. And winter weather advisories here over the central interior on up to the Yukon Flats, south side of the Brooks Range. And these advisories here for 3 to 5 inches of snow, most of which has already fallen, they end at 6 p.m. this evening. And farther to the east here, these continue out throughout the entire night tonight until tomorrow morning. And that includes the greater Fairbanks area on down into possibly in the northern Kuskokwim Valley there, and maybe Denali. We'll see on the other side of the mountains though. And that's for, again, gusty winds and the additional snow, some of which, as I mentioned, have picked up anywhere from 2 to 5 inches. And that'll make for some areas of lower visibilities. And satellite imagery, big mass of clouds here with the low tracking eastward developing and pulling cooler and drier air southward once again. So snow occurring here with a system even all the way down to southern Kenai Peninsula and back in northeast Bristol Bay, and rain pushing into the southeast coast today, and areas of light snow up into the interior here. Again, some areas picking up a little bit more than light snow. In fact, some areas carrying moderate snow. Indian Mountain this afternoon carrying moderate snow, and they've had about 3 to 5 inches in the last 12 hours, and heavy snow occurring in areas of the Susitna Valley of Talkeetna, picking up 4 to 6 inches of snow, and some areas even a little more there. And Talkeetna at times is carrying heavy snow, quarter-mile visibility in snow, and that classifies it as a heavy snowfall, and moderate at other times. And also here, southern Kenai Peninsula, from Homer on up to Seward and up into western Prince William Sound, Portage and Portage Glacier, Whittier, even Alyeska picking up anywhere from 3 to 4, maybe 5 inches of snow into this area. Made a little less in Turnagain Arm, Girdwood to Portage, and looked like the most was across southern Kenai Peninsula today, especially over toward Seldovia and Homer, and again back into northeast Bristol Bay, beginning to swing the winds around Kodiak Island. Much drier and in some cases sunnier here back in the west. A little breezy, 30 to 40 mile an hour wind gusts occurring in some areas here, especially along the coast. Out of the west or west-northwest, Nikolsky gusts 40 miles an hour out of the north, and Cold Bay about 30, 35. Sunshine, Pribilofs today. Temperatures pushing up near 40 at St. Paul with mostly sunny skies and just a breeze out of the north with the higher pressure building into that area. Out here to the west, a system really starting to weaken. You can see it's almost broken right through here. This part kind of hanging back. This pushing off to the northeast. Actually, this portion will come up and over the top of the ridge there and bring some more light snow into the northwest part of the state tomorrow. Otherwise, this low will begin to track southeastward, and that'll keep rain and snow in over the panhandle tonight, with the low center actually tracking down off the coast. And then tomorrow, that'll begin to pull colder air and definitely windier air or chillier air. It's not all that cold, but definitely drier with more sunshine and gusty winds, especially over the northern panhandle and the channeled areas. On the chart, here's that low center at mid-afternoon, about 1,018 millibars or so, kind of developing, and the gradient breezy conditions back here to the west. Could be some areas of blowing snow. And then the snow in the interior that occurred today all the way down southern Kenai Peninsula, and maybe some snow showers this afternoon, Kodiak Island, but all the moisture now east of the area, and the rain increasing along the central north coast of the Panhandle. High pressure building in with the clearing skies out here. Southern Bering Sea, pretty strong center, 1,043 millibars, ridging northward there all the way into the southern Arctic. And a couple of weak systems here brought a little bit of light snow today on the central western Arctic coast down into the interior there, into the warning area there in Noatak Valley, northern Kobuk Valley. And the next system out here, really weakening. You'll see tonight, all of that slides up to the northeast, and not all that much, but I'll spread some more snow into St. Lawrence Island. Pick up in the winds, could be more of a drifting snow than anything serious like a blowing snow or blizzard condition. We're seeing an increase in the winds there, and some snow, very weak trailing edge back to the west. Just a narrow band of precipitation with this very strong high, almost 1,050 millibars, centered just south of St. George Island, ridging quite strongly in across the western interior, especially the southwest interior. And that'll tighten the gradient up here along and east of the Alaska Range, as well as eastern interior. So it'll be pretty breezy tonight with snowfall rates diminishing. In fact, obviously ending here in the west. This little tracking down the coast of the Panhandle. Rain along the coast, lower elevation southern areas, and then kind of a mixture depending on your elevation, latitude, and time of the night here, trending towards snow in the north, but that'll begin tapering off, as we'll see for the Sunday map, showing that low pulling off to the southeast and drying out here from the northwest to the southeast, with offshore flow developing, getting pretty breezy over the Lynn Canal area, maybe in Stevens Patches, with less of an increase in the wind down the south, but definitely snow showers, rain and snow showers shutting off here. But lingering into the afternoon, Prince of Wales Island over towards Stewart, Hyder, Metlakatla. Probably have to wait till tomorrow night to get into some good clearing there. But tomorrow, sunny southern Alaska here, just variable clouds to sit in the valley now. Light snow ending. Snow showers look like they'll linger here on the northern side of the maybe central eastern Alaska Range, Northway Toe, kind of a light snowy, cloudy kind of day tomorrow, but an area clearing here under the ridge axis. And then that remnants of that system here scooting over the top of the ridge. Again, that drives some light snow in areas there. Best chance back to the northwest, and still kind of breezy here with that gradient, and some rain with this system that's down to the south spreads up to the central Aleutians there, and something of an increase in the winds as well there, especially for Adak and Atka. Light winds, southeast Bering Sea, Bristol Bay, Alaska Peninsula, light winds, sunshine, eastern Aleutians mostly sunny, light winds, same thing for the Pribilofs. And then the forecast on Tuesday, that system does move northward. Really not that strong, but a good shot of warm air coming northward on the southerly flow here. So it looks like rain spreading up into as far north as St. Matthew Island, down across the Pribilofs. Wind's not that much of a problem, really not much of a gradient with this. Maybe some small craft advisories, eastern Aleutians. I don't think it'll be that strong for the Pribilofs. And then a lot of rain showers back to the west. High pressure shifts inland, weakens. Flow out of the west over the top of the ridge there, right in the central interior, and that kind of hangs up a Arctic boundary here through the central interior with some areas of light snow either side of that front, especially here in the east. Some of that, maybe enough breeze to create some blowing snow conditions, higher elevations or eastern Alaska Range. Snow showers behind that. Areas of light snow, eastern Arctic coast, dry, sunny, and breezy for the southeast coast, the Panhandle, all the way down to the Queen Charlotte's, looks like on Tuesday. Next system out west, way out west there, shifting up across Kamchatka Peninsula into the Russian Far East. Lows for tonight, back below zero, anywhere from 10 to 20 below here, eastern North Slope and Arctic coast, a little milder back to the west near 0 Point Cape Lisburne. And single numbers across the Seward Peninsula into the northwest interior, actually northern Kuskokwim Valley. Otherwise, lows in the teens to lower 20s here, south central Alaska, after the system moves through and the colder air comes in. 30s for the Panhandle, lower 20s, Kodiak Island. We'll bounce back to lower 40s for your highs with sunshine tomorrow. Mid to upper 30s here, south central Alaska. Lower to mid 30s out along the southwest coast, up to St. Lawrence Island and the Seward Peninsula. Highs struggling to get above zero, central North Slope, Arctic coast, and Beaufort Sea area, even in the Brooks Range, with teens there for areas south of the mountains. But mid to upper 30s here, south central Alaska. Mid 40s for the Panhandle. And near 40 for the Aleutians, followed by lows a little below 40 for the Aleutians, near freezing for the Pribilofs, 15 below Arctic Village, otherwise a little milder there up along the Arctic coast, and 10 to 15, maybe 5 to 15, the Susitna Valley around Willow for your lows, maybe down near 0 or a little below for the Copper River Basin in some areas, and mostly in the 30s there for the Panhandle, but Yakutat down to 20, followed by highs, upper 30s Yakutat, 30s and lower 40s for the Panhandle, lower to mid 30s here, or mid to upper 30s, southern Alaska, teens on the Arctic coast, with eastern interior Tanana Valley 30 to 36.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Pretty good VFR here breaking out over much of the Bering Sea. All of the Aleutians, got to get all the way out to the Komodorskis to get back to the marginal VFR. The northern Bering Sea here, marginal St. Matthew Island becomes IFR, St. Lawrence Island, right up to Teller and Tin City, Wales, those locations, and marginal for Nome, but eastern Norton Sound on into the interior, pretty good VFR for tomorrow morning. Got some lingering IFR here on the west side of the Alaska Range, and possibly northwestern Kuskokwim Valley, mainly up along the mountains here, marginal to the Aleutian Range. VFR, south central Alaska, and some marginal VFR left over in the 40-mile country northward to a chance IFR here along the eastern border, and also the north slope, eastern north slope, narrow band IFR possible, probably is marginal though. IFR, that system over all the Panhandle, but that drops southeastward in the afternoon. You can see it really retreats on, or pulls off to the southeast, and still left with some marginal and IFR in the late afternoon over the, mostly down toward Dixon Entrance, but it'll be a little slower to clear out here than it will be in the north with the increasing offshore flow. And for Monday, VFR from the Queen Charlotte's, not Norton Sound, Dixon Entrance, all the way up into the southeast interior. And then another slug of moisture here coming into the west coast with some pretty good IFR oozing eastward here into the interior, into the western interior. IFR, western Arctic coast, central North Slope, central Brooks Range, then possible narrow band here from the Yukon Flats down possibly nearer West Fairbanks area on down to McKinley, possibly Minchumina in those areas. Kodiak Island though, VFR, Alaska Peninsula VFR, Pribilofs VFR, and in Alaska, marginal to VFR, but Nikolsky becoming IFR with this band here as it slips eastward from the excuse me, central Aleutians. Then for the afternoon, that kind of breaks apart here with the bulk of the IFR to the north, still west of St. Paul and St. George, and some IFR on the south coast of the eastern Aleutians. And this narrow band of IFR here coming out of the southern Kuskokwim Valley along the northern Bristol Bay coast, across Nunivak Island, on up, linking up with the other batch of IFR over the northern Bering into the northwest interior, eastern Arctic coast. Look for some IFR, and still some IFR here, possible eastern and upper Tanana Valley, 40-mile country, Eagle, and Copper River Basin, though, south of the mountains, VFR, lingering marginal VFR in the afternoon here for the Susitna Valley. Manusca Valley will be VFR, as well as all of the North Gulf Coast and the southeast coast. Passes Anatuvik, marginal becoming IFR. Same trend for Adigan, marginal VFR, then more moisture moving in for IFR conditions into the afternoon. Lake Clark and Merrill, IFR becoming VFR. Rainy IFR, and windy, also IFR. Isabel, marginal VFR. And Mentesta, marginal VFR. Tanita, VFR. And Portage looking good too. Good VFR, sea lens visibility is unlimited there. And for Chilkoot and White, same forecast. Nothing but VFR, clear skies, and turbulence with those northeast winds. For the freezing levels here, 2,000 feet southward there with the colder air coming down with that system as it pulls off to the southeast. So 2,000 feet all the way down to Queen Charlotte's at the surface along the North Gulf Coast, Kodiak Island, just south of the Alaska Peninsula, then back northward here with a southerly flow ahead of the next system, and 2,000 feet almost up to St. Lawrence Island, and 8,000 feet across the central Aleutians. icing. Look for some icing, trying to push up into the central Aleutians here during the afternoon hours. Just a chance of some there. And leftover rime or mixed icing of the light variety here. Mostly, well, we'll be north of the Alaska Range or northwest of the mountains, and that'll extend back with those disturbances back to the northwest coast. And this area improving from, or ending from northwest to southeast here, but still through the afternoon lingering over the southern panhandle. Jet stream, upper level low associated with that system, pulling off to the southwest, northwest cold, cooler, drier flow coming in behind it. 40-knot northwest winds at 3,000 feet or at 9,000 and 3,000 feet. Turbulence, Kodiak Island, North Gulf Coast.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, joined again by Eric Stevens from the GINA, or Geographic Information Network of Alaska at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Thanks for joining us again, Eric.
Glad to be here.
Thanks. We are talking about satellites today, and what are satellites? And the easy way to talk about that would be to introduce our friend the globe here, which is a round spheroid type shape. We haven't been on a flat Earth as far as history is known for several hundred years now, and because of that we also know that we are orbiting around other objects in space, and that objects are orbiting around the Earth as well. We call all those things satellites in some form or fashion, right, Eric?
Right. Well, this leads to the discussion of Johannes Kepler's research 400 years ago. Did some of the early work and founded the 3 laws of planetary motion, which are important to planets and also to weather satellites.
Okay.
Kepler's first law talks about how the orbit of an object around another object is an ellipse, not necessarily a circle.
Kind of a flattened circle?
Yeah, depending on how flat
squished
it could be.
Okay.
For our purposes, we'll just say they're mostly circular.
Okay.
The second law is most important for us, though, and that is the closer an object is to the thing it's orbiting, the faster it goes. So in the solar system, the planet Mercury is the closest planet to the sun. It orbits the sun in 88 days. It moves at 100,000 kilometers an hour.
It is just
moving.
Okay.
Right. And further out from the Earth is Jupiter, and it moves at only 1/4 the speed of Mercury, and it has to go further, so it takes 12 of our years for Jupiter to make one lap. The further out you are, the slower you go.
Okay.
So we're talking about planets. What does it have to do with weather satellites? Turns out Kepler's laws apply to planets orbiting the sun. They also apply to satellites orbiting the Earth.
Okay.
You know, our natural satellite is the moon. There's the famous Apollo 8 Earthrise shot.
Beautiful shot.
Oh, yeah, you could just talk about that forever. December 1968, the moon is about 250,000 miles away from the Earth.
Okay.
It takes a month to go around the Earth. It's that far out, it takes a full month to do an orbit. Another shot here of the International Space Station. Instead of being 250,000 miles out, the ISS is only 250 miles up. It's really close. And so it doesn't take a full month for the space station to go around the Earth. It only takes 90 minutes. It's so close, it just whips right around 90 minutes.
Okay.
So weather satellites, there are a number of weather satellites, and there are a number of orbits. The further out you have the satellite, the longer it takes to go around the Earth. And this is important because different satellites have different purposes. So we have a satellite here. This little salt shaker lid will serve as our satellite going around the Earth. Let's say you have a satellite that's 22,000 miles above the Earth. This is kind of a magical spot, because at that distance, it takes a full day for the satellite to go around the Earth. Imagine if you put your satellite 22,000 miles up from the equator and had it go with the Earth as the Earth spun.
At the same speed.
Right. The satellite goes around the Earth just as fast as the Earth itself is turning. In effect, the satellite will hover in one spot.
I see.
And it appears when you make a movie loop of picture after picture after picture. You can replay that and you get these movie loops. Geostationary satellites, these are called. These are stationary in appearance. And they provide a constant frame of reference. We've got an example here. Another nice thing about these satellites, since they're that far out at 22,000 miles, you can see from pole to pole, which is nice. So they're pretty broad view and a constant frame of reference.
So those are the pictures. If you're watching a weather satellite loop on TV, your favorite weather show, that's the picture that you're going to see, is one that's sitting over the same spot.
If you're seeing a movie loop play again and again, that came from geostationary satellites. That's the only way you can do that.
Yeah.
The bummer, though, for us in Alaska is we're up on the very top of the planet. And for geostationary satellites to work, they have to be over the equator. So for the geostationary bird to view Alaska, it's kind of like reading a book, but you're reading it edge on like that.
Right.
So there's another kind of orbit called the polar orbit.
Okay.
which is nice. We're near the pole.
Yeah.
And here's a satellite. Those polar orbiters are much closer to the Earth, getting down toward International Space Station elevation. And they're not in the equatorial plane. Rather, their orbital plane is inclined like this. And the Earth turns under that satellite as the satellite orbits. The nice thing about that is for Alaska, the satellite will go right over Alaska a few times a day. And so you get a much closer image. We've got a shot from the Sumi NPP satellite. Specifically, it's a true color image from the VIRS sensor. That's an acronym there.
Okay.
But it's a beautiful shot of Alaska, and you can see so much detail, the kind of detail because you're close in.
Very high resolution.
You couldn't get this kind of view from geostationary satellites. The advantage of these polar orbiters is nice close imagery. You can see a lot of detail. The disadvantage, though, is that the satellite flies by, and then you have to wait a while to get the next image. And if geostationary weaknesses are that you're reading the page like that, the polar orbiter, you're reading the page straight on, but it's so close, and then it zips by, and you have to wait for the satellite to come around the Earth again. So there's no one perfect solution. Different satellites for different orbits, each has their strength, and amazingly, it all comes back to Johannes Kepler and his laws of planetary motion, the same laws that govern how the planets orbit the sun. They govern how the satellites orbit the Earth, and even our little pretend salt shaker right here.
Right, okay. Well, since the 1957 Sputnik, we've been putting man-made objects into orbit around the Earth and starting to get pictures back. Who knows what will happen in the next 50 to 100 years. Amazing
it's
stuff.
A growing science, and the future is bright.
Thank you so much for joining us again, Eric. And for more information on GINA and what the satellite systems do there and what Eric's been talking about today, you can go to the web address on your screen. For Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the segment. And looking at today's sea ice analysis, still a little farther back, really not much farther than yesterday. Again, with the north and northwest winds here tending to advance it southward, but that's going to end with the flow becoming westerly tomorrow and then southerly on Tuesday. So over the next 5 days, it's going to be, again, net loss back to the north and really not seeing any big push to the south coming up and continued gradually diminishing Cook Inlet as well. Here for the Panhandle, small craft advisories, northerlies tomorrow, mostly 30 knots, except the south coast, 25 knots with 12-foot seas. Sustained northerlies, Lynn Canal, 40 knots there with the low system pulling off to the southeast, high pressure building over the Yukon. So full gales there, and small craft advisory, Stevens Passage, and less of a northerly increase there over the Clarence Strait area, 20 knots with 4-foot seas. And then up to 25 sustained throughout the day Monday, 5-foot seas, 30 knots out of the north for Stevens Passage, and holding on to 40 knots, northerlies there for Lynn Canal. That's probably going to come down in the afternoon, though, probably under gale force, but starting out with gales there. And northerly gales here along the central and north coast at about 35 knots and 30 knots out of the north there along Prince of Wales Island, northeast 30 knots near Yakutat. And for Cook Inlet tomorrow, northwest winds 10 to 15 knots, not too bad with mostly clear skies or clearing out. And then gales here, Kamishak Bay at 40 knots, Barrens northwest 35 knots, small craft advisories north to northwest 30 knot winds for the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, small craft advisories northwest 25, higher gusts out of the western northern bays with seas at about 5 feet. And those come way down to 10 knots with slight seas on Monday. And west-northwest 20 knots for the North Gulf Coast with 7-foot seas, small craft advisories, Barren Islands, 30-knot winds out of the northwest, down to 25 knots from the northwest for Kamishak Bay. Cook Inlet northerlies 10 to 15 with 1 to 3-foot seas. Out to Kodiak Island, small craft advisories northwest 25 to 30 knots, strongest on the east side of the islands with 30-knot northwest winds all the way down to Castle Cape, Alaska Peninsula north at 15. 4 to 8-foot seas, highest on the Pacific side of the peninsula, and northwest breeze at 15 for Bristol Bay. And then they'll swing around to variable, becoming southeast, but only about 10 knots there for Bristol Bay in the afternoon on Monday. And north side of the peninsula, southeast 20 knots, Pacific side, southwest 20 knots, all the way up to Sitkinak, turning west at 20 for Shelikof Strait. Small craft advisories on the east side of the islands, 25-knot winds with 8-foot seas. Fox Islands tomorrow, Unamak Island, east 30 knots, seas 10 to 13 feet. On Alaska Island, 20 to 25 knots out of the east. And for Adak and Atka, easterlies at 30 knots, and that blows all the way out toward Kiska and then turns southeast to 20 from there to Shemya. And on Monday, northeast at 15 from Shemya to Kiska. And Central Aleutians, southeast 25 knots, good for small craft advisory, seas 10 to 13 feet. And now pretty uniform wind pattern for a change here for the Fox Islands. Both islands, southeast 30 knots, seas 7 to 13 feet. Southwest coast, Yukon Delta coast, St. Lawrence Island, Norton Sound, 25-knot winds for brisk wind advisories there. Small crafts for St. Matthew Island with 25 knots out of the southwest, 15 knots here, Kuskokwim Delta coast and the Pribilofs. And for Monday, southeast 20 for the Pribilofs, same thing for St. Matthew Island, south 15 for the southwest coast, and brisk wind advisory, southwest 25, St. Lawrence Island, Norton Sound. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast, that's where the winds will be the strongest. That's where the blizzard warning's out for midnight tonight until noon tomorrow. As you can see, diminishing again in the afternoon, but hanging on in the east. 20 knots turn south here on the west side, and then brisk wind advisories from Cape Beaufort down to Wales. On Monday, southwest 30, Wales to Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort, southwest 20, west 15 on the west side of the coast, north 10, central coast, and then westerlies for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, but only 15 knots. Tonight, this system tracks southeastward, snow letting up, ending, and beginning to clear out south central Alaska here as strong high pressure builds into the western part of the state. A couple of disturbances will keep the snow going longer on the east side there. This system really washing out, but some light snow spreading up to the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island. That shifts inland tomorrow, but it's all light and strong high pressure southeast Bering Sea, sunshine, panhandle, southern Alaska, even up into the east central interior.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.